welcome back to GaySMR. Today, it has nothing to do with ASMR whatsoever. I'm ranting, because that's fun. So, I'm going to rant about a kid, and I'm not going to say his name, because that's mean to say someone's name on the internet, even though no one's going to see this, but that's okay. We'll make his name Paul. There is an image on the screen that has nothing to do with him, but Paul just sounds like a plumber name, so I decided to put a stock image of a plumber, because, you know, he's just a nice plumber guy, so you can just stare at his face the whole time. So, I started this year at a new school, however many months ago, and I was a classmate of, a class of all new people. I knew only one of them, and I wasn't really friends with them. But that's fine. New people, fun to meet them. So first week, or maybe first 2 weeks, I'm meeting people just casually. Nothing is exciting yet. And so we had a seating plan in our English class because we found out my class talks a lot. And they really don't shut up. They just don't listen. So we had a seating plan in our English class. I was put in front of Paul. That's fine. I didn't know the kid. He seemed fairly normal because I didn't know him. I got put in front of him. I was like, okay, fine. I don't usually talk to people in class. Well, at least that was my attitude at the beginning. I was put in front of him, and I was a good student at the time. I didn't talk to people during classwork. And if I did, it was very rare. And so I was just doing my work. I was opening up my binder to grab my assignment. Everyone was being fairly quiet because the seating plan was a good one. This kid behind me, he takes out a Mountain Dew and soda water or some other pop. He took out 2 full-size cans, Mountain Dew and another thing. It was in a yellow can. I don't exactly remember what drink it was, but that's besides the point. That doesn't matter. He puts them up on his desk at the very edge. I'm like, that's not very smart. I never put my drinks at the edge of things because in case they spill. So I was like, well, whatever. Healthy to have Mountain Dew and whatever else he had right in the morning at school. So he put them on his desk. He was gonna drink both of them. He opened them both at once. So I start opening my binder to pull out my papers. I reached my elbow backwards farther than I meant to, and it hit the pop can. It knocked the pop can over, and liquid, whatever, it was clear, actually, whatever was in there, it all spilled out over his desk. Actually, not that much. It was probably about the size of, a pen, but more a little bit rounder. It was like a skinny line, because it had spilled over. He picked it up immediately, and I heard it knock over. I turned around and looked, and a small puddle had spilled on his paper. See, his paper was blank because he didn't do very much work in class. He wasn't he was more one of the lazy kids. He hadn't done anything on the paper yet. It was completely blank. So there's this puddle of just clear liquid on it. I don't know, it might have been soda water, but I can't remember. And it was on there, and I was like, oh my god, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to do that. I was pulling my paper out of my binder. I'm really sorry. He got so mad. He screamed at me, and he cussed me out. I apologized 20 times, and I felt really scared because I was already on edge because it was the first couple weeks of school, and I knew nobody, and so I was already on edge, and he was screaming at me, and I didn't know what to do, and I just kept apologizing and looking at my teacher please help me, what do I do? And she just I don't know how, but she didn't hear what he was saying. And he was like, what is wrong with you? And then he kept on saying, he goes up to our teacher, and he's like, I can't. And she's like, why aren't you doing your work? And he's like, well, I can't because this dumb person spilt my pop all over my paper. Miss English was like, well, oh well, it's blank, just get a new one. And he just was muttering angrily under his breath. And he was like, well, great, now I can't do my work, even though there was a whole pile of the exact same sheet up at the front. And we were sitting up at the front. There was a whole pile of these sheets, and his was blank. Maddy's ringtone just went off, and it's Dan screaming at Phil, so that's nice. The puddle was not very big, and I think it was soda water. And water, everyone should know, if water gets on your paper, if you leave it to dry under like a textbook, it'll be fine. And it might be a little bit wrinkly, but it'll be fine. It will dry. Water evaporates. Apparently, he didn't know that. Or maybe he knew that, but he was just angry anyways. And so this little puddle, he lifts his paper up and lets it spill onto his desk. He gets up, and he's just screaming and just being angry. Like, Miss English, my teacher, did nothing about it. And so, whatever. That was over. I think he was mad at me for the rest of how many days. And I remember being put on the same team with him in volleyball for gym, and I was kind of terrified of him because he's a big and tall kid, like very large.
I got suspended because of the name.
Oh fuck.
Well, this won't be on Gay SMR.
Well, okay, this is a channel called Gay SMR. YouTube just banned our account for having the name Gay
Suspended.
SMR.
Actually, get your facts straight.
Suspended. They suspended our account. Our YouTube account was just suspended in the middle of filming. That's nice. Well, we're going to need to make a new channel for this video. He didn't really like me, and we never really talked, and we kind of just... Well, shit, she just did it. And a long time, there might have been more things that happened with him that were kind of dumb. I remember he's just obnoxious. I see him yell at people. He argues with the teachers. He's just not the greatest kid. So I already don't like him. And by now, everyone knows each other a fair amount. It's a couple months into the year. It's science. And everyone's just working on their science. We also had a sitting plan in science. That's how bad our class is. So we're in science. I'm sitting next to a person I'm not really friends with. But we were both silently working. So whatever. It was chill. Paul and his friend. So Michael and Paul are sitting at a table because they were put together for some odd reason. Mrs. Science thought it was a good idea to put them together. So they're not like the best of friends, but they were sitting together and they were talking because both of them usually talk to whoever they're next to. They just talk to anybody. And so Michael is a lot less messed up than Paul by a far, like a long shot. So Michael and Paul are sitting there, and I hear them start talking. I don't eavesdrop that often, but like everyone else was silent, and I was just doing my work, and they were right next to me and the other kid at my table. They were at a table right next to us, and they were just talking. And if it was like had been like a boring conversation about Fortnite or something, I wouldn't have listened in. I would have ignored them because that's boring. But then Paul started talking about his many girlfriends, apparently. And I really shouldn't have overheard all of this, but I have. I was sitting there just doing my science, and then I started listening into this. So he's like, I have 3 girlfriends right now. And Paul is telling Michael the different locations of where his so-called girlfriends are. He said some pretty disgusting things. Probably very not right things for a 14-year-old to be saying to a 13-year-old. He was talking about the things he would send to her and about how he's gonna make her send him things. And Michael's just listening and asking questions, and Paul just keeps on blurting them out. And like, how does Paul have 3 girlfriends? He is not an attractive fellow at all.
Gross.
He is not one attractive
Not
fellow.
at all.
So they're talking about things, and he's like, she came over to my house last night. And I'm like, oh my god. I don't know if this is true, but he's telling the story about all the things he was planning to do to her and all the things that they did, and it was very, very bad. And yet no one else seemed to notice what they were talking about. Not even the person who was sitting next to me at my table. I somehow was the only one who heard them talking about this, even though people were also close to them. And they were the only ones in the class talking, surprisingly, at that time. And nobody else heard them. They weren't even being quiet. So I don't know if people were really that invested in their work or what was going on, or if they were all sleeping. So I don't want to get into detail of the things he said, because that is not child friendly. And that is not good for YouTube. So, yeah, and so I was like, well, that's very sketchy. And he also, then he turned and screamed across the classroom to a girl named Amanda. He's like, hey, are your parents out of town this weekend? And she's like, yeah. He's like, can I use your house as a place to bring my girlfriends over and we can have a big party? I was like, what? And so she was like, no, I'm not letting you host a party at my house and trash the place. And then he started yelling at her, yelling at Amanda because she wouldn't let him, and they got into a big argument, and he ended up leaving the classroom. It was interesting. And then, so more time passes by. So he's in every class of ours, well, at least for this semester, and I try ignoring the things that happen because, like, I don't know if it's fully true. I don't know if he really has 3 girlfriends, and I don't really want to remember all the descriptive things he described to Michael. So Paul, I just didn't talk to him. I think we were chill now because it had been a long time since I spilled his pop by accident. So we're in the gym, all of us, and he's doing whatever in gym, and I think we were playing volleyball, and we have so many classmates that only so many teams can play at once, and so my team and another team were sitting off, and so I remember I heard someone ranting about Paul, and so I was like, oh yeah, I really don't like that Paul kid. And then a girl pulls me aside, and she's like, yeah, did you hear what he did to Katie? And I was like, what? And I was like, what did he do to Katie? What did Paul do to Katie? And then so Katie, I didn't really know her that much, but she seemed like a nice girl, a little bit weird, but like she seemed nice. I hadn't really talked to her much, and she was fairly quiet for the most part. So she's like, yeah, so one day was bending over to pick up her things, and Paul went up and slapped her ass. And so I was like, what? And I was like, wait, this actually happened? And she's like, yeah, Paul slapped Katie's ass. And I was like, okay. And I was like, does any of the authorities know about this? And then they're like, no, Katie won't let anyone say anything. And then she's gonna kill me if she finds out that I told you. And I was like, oh, great. So he sexually assaulted someone. Or, yeah, that's fun. And so she said she was fine and that it hadn't really affected her that much and she didn't really care. And it might have been an accident, she said. And I was like, okay. So, it's been a long time since then, so there'd be kind of no point in, like, letting an adult know now, because it's been a while. And so, yeah, that was just a little thing. I was like, okay, well, I really hate this guy now. I really hate Paul. So, and another fun gym class. I hate gym, by the way. I absolutely hate it. We were in gym playing basketball, and had a team that Paul was on was versing a team that our gym teacher's daughter was on, Mr. Jim, his daughter, and he is a scary dude. He's short, but he's really scary and not very nice, and I don't really like him, but he has his daughter who's in his gym class, who's also in our gym class. So it's a team his daughter's on, and Paul was on a different team. They were versing, and it was male and female mixed. And so he was on team. He was just playing normally. Everyone was playing a game. And they were running. And he pushed Mr. Jim's daughter over. Stepdaughter, whatever. That's not important. Pushed her to the ground. And then he laughed to her face after he pushed her. Mr. Jim sees his daughter, stepdaughter, whatever, get pushed over. And he's like, oh shit, bro. Fuck this. That's not happening. And so he pulls Paul aside and he's like, go apologize to my daughter right now. That's not right. You can't just push her over. She did nothing to you. This is basketball. You're not pushing people over. And then she was like, go apologize to her right now. And then instead of going and apologizing, he starts mocking him and says, go apologize to her. And he starts mimicking him. Okay, he was a horrible person, but he had balls. Mr. Jim is very spooky. So, he's very spooky. So, and he's mocking him. So, Paul is angry and he just leaves. And he goes up to his group of friends. Surprisingly, this kid has friends.
Lots.
Paul has a lot of friends. Why? I will never know or understand.
They're all good for nothing, vapors. If you're gonna vape, like, actually do something with
Yeah.
your life. It's not, it shouldn't be part of your personality. Yeah, I vape.
Yeah, he has a bunch of druggy friends, so that's fun. And so he's in this big group of horrible friends he has, and he's talking crap about Mr. Jim and saying, like, oh my god, guess what he did to me today? And so rumors got around and eventually got to Mr. Jim that he was talking shit about him behind his back. And so, this is a soap opera. Mr. Jim goes up to him and he's like, so, I heard you were talking shit about me, Paul. So, do you want to say it to my face? And he just was, asking that stuff. And he was screaming at him, but I'm not going to scream to reenact that. And he was screaming at him because he was protective of his stepdaughter, because she was pushed over. And so he yelled at him, and then eventually Paul just got kicked out of the gym and the class. So now, it's up to the current date right now. So currently, he's suspended right now. He's been suspended about, 5 times this year already?
Probably closer to 6 or 7.
6 or 7 times.
Not even joking.
And it's been for, weeks at a time. So he's been suspended a lot for many reasons. And so he is now, we have a new seating plan in our new class in French and Socials. Mr. French and Mr. Socials, who are the same person, made a seating plan. Even before we got to prove how bad we are as a class, he put a seating plan and he put our other channel member, Maddy, right next to him.
And next to this really creepy new kid.
Yeah, so now
He has to be really creepy.
Maddy has to sit to the creepy new kid and Paul. But Paul hasn't came back to school yet. And I guarantee you, when he gets here and he finds out, he's going to complain. Even though it's way worse for Maddy and the new kid too. And so Maddy is stuck there. But Paul has not been unsuspended yet. So that's good. Maybe he'll stay suspended forever. Maybe he's expelled. We don't know. And so yeah, he's just a bad kid. I felt like ranting about something, so he decided to be the subject of my rant. Also, I forgot to mention, we had to do science fair. Every child pretty much has to do a science fair once in their life. I have done many. Unfortunately, we had to do another one this year. And so, a kid in our class, he partnered up with Paul because they were friends at the time. In fact, they spent 2 classes shooting spitballs at me and Maddy. One of them hit me in the eye, but I was too much of a wuss to interrogate them. So they just hit us with spitballs the whole time. That was fun. They were painful too, and disgusting, and I'm a germaphobe, so that was great. So Paul and this kid are partnered up. They're friends. They're dummies, and they're always just doing dumb shit. So they're partnered up on a science project. They fooled around for their first 2 classes shooting spitballs, but Paul left again. So, the other kid was left to do the whole project by himself. Paul had purposely left for the week, so the science project had been the full other kid's full priority. So the other kid was like, well, that's stupid. I'm not doing this whole thing by myself. Screw that. And so he was like, I'm not doing anything until Paul gets back, because that's not fair. I'm not giving him like a good grade for something he didn't help with or didn't contribute to. And so he was like, I'm not doing anything. And so my science teacher, Mrs. Science, decided, that's fair, whatever, I don't really care. And so he did nothing, and he was expecting Paul to come back after a couple days. He didn't. And so on the very last day, when we were supposed to be presenting, or we had a little bit of time to work on it. We had a little bit of time to work on the science thing. So he comes into class, and everyone's shocked, because we expected him to be gone the whole week. Well, he almost was, but like, he showed up for the last day of this thing. And so he comes into class, and then sees that there's nothing on the poster board. He goes up to the new kid, and he notices that there's nothing on the poster board. And he's like, what the fuck? And they started cussing this kid out, and like, he did nothing. Then the kid kind of did a little bit, but it's literally nothing.
He typed out a bunch of this shit, and then he just hadn't gotten anything onto the board, and Kai flipped out at him.
I don't know. And he had because Maddy was trying to help him.
Oh.
So he had nothing done, and then so he's cussing him out, and it's okay to be a little bit angry. Maybe if Paul had been sick, then the new kid should have done something. But he knew Paul wasn't sick because he just wasn't. I don't know exactly how he knew, but he wasn't sick. He missed it because of the science fair. And so he's cussing this kid out in the middle of class. Okay, so our new science teacher wasn't very disciplinary. She never really yelled at us. She tried to enforce some rules later on, but she was a little bit too nervous to actually fully get mad and discipline people yet. And understandable. She was nice. And so he's cussing him out with some pretty explicit words. He's cussing this kid out and being like, why didn't you do anything? Why did you leave me to do all the work? Wrong way around, buddy. And he was like, you could have done something. And so they're cussing each other out. They're yelling at each other in the class. This is loud, by the way, and everyone else in the class is listening and just staring at them. And my teacher is here hearing all of this, but she doesn't know what to do. So she's just sitting there listening, and she's like, guys, please stop. But she's not going to say it loud enough because she's afraid, because there's 2 very tall kids screaming at each other with explicit language. So she just kind of waited for it to be over and kind of panicked and didn't know what to do. And so they're screaming at each other, and then eventually, the kid's like, you can't fucking sit next to me, Paul. Go somewhere else. And so Paul goes and sits next to Amanda. And I was like, well, okay. And so, yeah, they're not friends anymore. And they didn't get very much done. Paul did absolutely nothing. He handed nothing in for the science fair, and the other kid tried to finish his project. I don't remember if he got it completed or not.
It was really shitty.
He did. Maddy says he did. She helped him. She's so kind. She helped the kid. He's not the greatest either, but she still helped him, and he ended up finishing it, but there was not that much on there, and it was really crappy. But she still helped him to finish it so it could be accepted as a project, I guess. And so, even though it was really bad, he got done. Good for him. He had 1 class. So, yeah, he's just a bad person. And he blamed failing his science project on the kid because he got it. But, he didn't contribute anything. Even if he was sick, I'm pretty sure he has a computer at home. He could have done something. Or even on a phone. He could have gone on Google Docs and downloaded that on his phone and typed some stuff out. The main part was just typing stuff out and printing it, and he couldn't do the printing part, but he could have typed stuff out. Even if he was sick, he could be laying in his bed with cough medicine and comfort food and just laying in his bed. As long as he could see and had fingers, he could have gone on his phone and typed something out, but he didn't. So, yeah, he's just a crappy
Piece of
kid.
shit.
Yeah, he's a piece of shit. We all don't like him. He's a pervert, and in my opinion, he's a future rapist. That might be a very strong term, but I honestly feel like he could be a future rapist. And I really don't like him because he is not good, and he's very inappropriate. He makes dirty jokes all the time. I think he made some interesting, really explicit threats. Yeah, he's just a bad person, and we all fucking hate him. So I felt like ranting about him. And damn, it's been a half hour of me ranting about Paul. That's nice. Goodbye. And see you next time on whatever our channel name is. After we have a new one now, I think, because our other one that we were currently using got suspended for our name. Apparently gay ASMR is too offensive for the internet. Yeah, okay. Bye.